Hello, BookTube, and welcome to day 2 of Litmus 2017. That's a 12-day literary festivity created by Adrian at Stripcover Lit. That's supposed to go for 12 days during the Christmas time season, celebrating all aspects of literature and how they intersect with our lives. It's a wonderful idea. My only problem with Litmus, having watched all the videos from day 1, is that not enough of you are doing it. It's such an inclusive, wonderful idea. We should all be doing it. And category 2 for today is flash fiction. And in his original video, Adrian invites all of us to go out and look into flash fiction, figure out what it is, correctly assuming that not a lot of the people who watch him are really going to have a clear idea of what it is and might need to learn. And I was one of those people. So I went and looked. I did a whole bunch of reading. I did a whole bunch of YouTube video watching to try and get to the heart of it. Because before that, I had just assumed that flash fiction, which is typically characterized as fiction that's 1,000 words or less, was fiction for lazy people, lazy writers and lazy readers. But I knew that Adrian isn't a lazy reader or a lazy writer. He's not at all afraid of 50,000 words. So I went out and looked with an open mind and studied, for as much time as I could spare it. I am buried in work, so I couldn't spare it much time. And when I was done with all that, I came to the conclusion that flash fiction is fiction for lazy people, lazy writers and lazy readers. But again, Adrian isn't one of them. So there had to be something in it that attracts him and that made him want to introduce it to other people, to a wider audience. So he was very generous in his original video. He talked about how a lot of the canonical works that we don't think of as flash fiction actually do qualify. They're actually very short. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized it was true. He mentioned Hemingway, but a whole bunch of authors took advantage of the booming newspaper and magazine market of the early part of the 20th century, when even daily newspapers sometimes had short stories. Just 1 page, 2 columns. And also, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that comic books also had prose stories a lot of the time. Stan Lee wrote a ton of them that will never be found. No one will ever collect those. There were a ton of Batman prose pages just at the back of random issues of comic books. So it can be done. And there should be a whole bunch of examples out there. I thought about Dorothy Parker and a whole bunch of other writers who wrote for that market. And I was probing around the books here in the room, the wall of penguins and everything else, looking for a good example. I found there's an Indian writer named Narayan, who I absolutely love. Writes a lot of short stories. And so I thought about him automatically. I pulled down a volume of his and alighted on a story called Attila, about a village dog who nobody wants until he proves his worth in an accidental way. And I read it again, and it was totally charming. Those of you who have not visited Narayan's Malgudi really need to. But when I was flipping the pages, 2 or 3 pages, I realized it's still too long. It might technically qualify in the generous parameters that Adrian set forth, but when I was doing all of that semi-formal research into flash fiction, the impression I was getting is that its practitioners and its teachers and its fans very much think of it as something shorter, 1,000 words, 700 words, even 500 words or less. And I couldn't find anything here that fit that bill. So I got totally into the spirit of flash fiction, decided to write my own. And that's what I'm going to read to you today. I'm not going to really call it my favorite example of flash fiction, because I don't think anybody really has a favorite example of this stuff. But I'm maybe not the right audience for it. And all of the examples that all the videos that I was reading and the instructions on, tips for flash fiction and whatnot, we're all saying, avoid historical fiction, avoid excessive exposition, because you just don't have the space. Sorry about the jumping camera. My puppy, who has been asleep for the last hour, is trying to eat this computer, and the capture app on my phone appears to have been discontinued. It doesn't exist anymore, so I can't upload videos that way. The upload function on the phone directly to YouTube says that a video exactly the same length as the one I uploaded from the phone yesterday is now too long, and the upload function on this MacBook is also not working. It's worked twice out of the last 10 times I've tried, and the dog is insane, and I fully expect sirens, attack helicopters, and the ceiling to start falling while I'm making this video. And unlike all the rest of the year. Right now, at this exact moment, I simply don't have time in the day to fight with every single aspect of getting a video to you people. So I'm fairly certain that this is going to be my last appearance on BookTube until the new year, until I can have somebody over here, a tech person over here, to rip apart the computers, restart everything, re-download everything, search for bugs, search for viruses, figure out why none of the approaches I use to upload a video now work. But you know as well as I do the way life works. The minute I don't have a mountain of other things to do, all of it will work perfectly. It's only impeding me now because of that. The only reason that this puppy right now absolutely has to be standing right here when 12 hours have gone by when she hasn't needed to do that is because I'm trying to make this one video. So I'm sorry for all of this, the shaky cam and whatnot. I promise not to inflict it on you again, because I'll be hanged if I'm going to go through 2 hours like this 2 hours again. I have actual deadline work for a large audience of people. So, but anyway, to get back to the subject, now that I've given a toot-court apology, this is the last video I'm going to make in which I'm fighting to make a video, because the whole point of BookTube for me is that it has to be easy, and it has not been today at all. And it wasn't yesterday, and it wasn't the day before that. The whole time, each day, I was thinking, well, you know, you have a huge amount of deadlines, and they're all stacked up, but you don't want to let this go, give it a try, and then it's cannot do this, will not do this, inappropriate action, impossible action. Anyway, as I was saying, to get fully into the spirit of flash fiction, I decided to write my own. And that's the flash fiction I'm going to share with you today. It's just a little over 500 words. And because all of those people said, you know, don't write historical fiction, you'll never be able to bring your audience into the tension of the moment because you'll have too much to tell them, I decided to write historical fiction. And we'll see if I bring you into the moment. So this story is set in 49 BC in Roman Gaul. And it's a scene with people talking, because as the theater geeks among you will know, if you want to cram a lot of stuff into a small amount of space, dialogue's the way to go. We're going to start off the scene. I'm going to read this. Take just a minute to read it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. And it starts off with people talking. It's just 3 people in a tent. So, Gaius Julius, you cannot do this. Are you joking, Trebonius? The thing's a dirty little ditch. My men could cross it marching in their sleep. Trebonius's hatchet face wrinkled. Bland Albinus, ever the explainer, interceded. He's not referring to tactical difficulty, Julius Caesar. He's talking about politics. I'm talking about sacrilege, said Trebonius, trying not to snarl. The tent was taut with the cold of Januarius, but he had beads of sweat on his creased forehead. If you cross with your legion into Roman soil, you will declare yourself an invader, another Hannibal, an enemy of Rome. Gaius Julius Caesar was seated while his 2 lieutenants were standing. Now he lounged a bit to emphasize that point. According to the Senate, I'm already an enemy of Rome. And this plays into their hands. You'll be proving all the worst things they've said about you. Why give them such a victory? Why not simply return to the city yourself as a citizen and face your enemies in court? Caesar smiled a little. You'd fancy your chances in court, would you? Your lawyer against Cicero? Better that than treason. Trebonius, Albinus said quietly, go easy there. You're talking to your commanding officer. Caesar was waving down the objection, but his eyes remained fixed. I'm no traitor, Trebonius. It's Pompey and his Senate lackeys who defy the will of the people. The people of Rome love Caesar. I remember when you didn't refer to yourself in the third person, said Trebonius. That's just rancor, said Albinus. It's pointless in any case, said Caesar. I'm the one who has no choice here. If I returned to the city alone, I'd be strangled in a cellar within an hour. The legion guarantees my safety. You won't be very safe if you take the field against Pompey with only 1 legion. Rome has no legionaries like mine, said Caesar, looking through the tent flap at the neat lines of the camp, and Pompey won't take the field against me. Maybe against one of you, but not against me. Trebonius slapped his thigh. This isn't about you and Pompey and your idiotic rivalry. This is about a Roman putting himself at the head of a legion and declaring himself to be greater than the Senate and the people. Pompey's done that for years, Albinus said, but he sounded freshly worried. Caesar stood. I'm the servant of the people of Rome, but I won't be a sacrificial animal for the Senate. In addition to the best combat veterans in the world, I also have right on my side. Albinus, go and muster the men. When Albinus was gone, Caesar stared at Trebonius for a long, silent moment. You're dismissed as well. And if you ever call me an idiot again to my face, I'll have you nailed to a scaffold and whipped to death." "Spoken like a humble servant," said Trebonius, trying not to hide his fear. He hesitated at the tent flap. "I'll go help Albinus." "Good. I'll confer with both of you at supper, once we're on Italian soil." The last line was a barb, and Trebonius quietly raged about it as he walked to follow Albinus. In his tent, Caesar sat back down and glanced at the Legion reports he'd allowed to accumulate on his work desk. Then he sat back and thought about a bit of Gaulish pornography he'd seen that morning. And there you go. That's flash fiction, which I gather is a whittled scene. You take a scene. This scene, for instance, was well over 1,500 words when I originally wrote it. And then I whittled it down. And that process is the thing that I don't know what was in Adrian's mind, but that's certainly one of the ways that I can recommend flash fiction myself, having studied it and then tried it. That process is invaluable for any kind of writer. To take what you've written and cut it to pieces, cut all kinds of things out, specifically to maintain the thrust of the thing while taking out a lot of the extraneous stuff that's not extraneous if you're writing at longer length. This scene doesn't tell you what anybody looks like except Trebonius, and you only know about what he looks like because it reinforces what he is like. It doesn't tell you what the room looks like. Only barely gives you the month or the weather or anything like that. The vast amount of politics involved is I had a lot of that in the original version. I took it out trying to keep just what men who already knew it might say to each other, rather than that annoying habit in a lot of historical fiction where characters will say things to each other for expository reasons that they would already know in real life. And I had to keep an ear for all of that in a way that reminded me of writing tweets for Twitter. It's a very, very useful thing. I very much doubt that I will write flash fiction again, but I could see, having read about it and tried it, how habit-forming it could get. So I wholeheartedly encourage the rest of you to explore that world and maybe even try it yourself. And that's it for Litmus Day 2. I don't know if you're going to see this video. I'll make it in good faith, and then I'll try, but I hate to sound like dad in the station wagon, but I simply don't have time to wrestle with getting this onto YouTube 18 different ways with tons of workarounds that have been tried in the gray market in Saigon. I need it to happen easily, or it can't happen at all today, and maybe not tomorrow until I clear off a lot of work. So we'll see. I will give it a try, and I will give it a second try, and because I love you, I will give it a third try. After that, I have to go back to earning money, which sounds really strange and doesn't usually apply on this channel, but it's just a rotten, crowded period that I'm in, when the very last thing I can justify is fighting with a video. So I'm going to wrap it up there. That is Litmus Day 2. I very much doubt that I will be able to do any more of Litmus if technology keeps rebelling against me. If I wake up tomorrow morning and everything works just fine, and the ceiling isn't falling down, and the dog isn't trying hard to knock the computer over, and a million other things aren't going wrong, then maybe, because Litmus is great. It's great fun. But no promises. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, and I'm going to try to get it to you. If you see it, then I succeeded. Then I don't know. I don't know what will happen. If this whole process is easier tomorrow by some weird computer magic, then we'll continue. Although I'm not expecting that. So I'm gonna I'll say a tentative goodbye now until I get apparently a whole new suite of apps, a whole new computer, a whole new Wi-Fi system, a whole new internet carrier. Apparently I need to reinvent this whole thing from the ground up because last week everything stopped working. But anyway, that could just be the frustration of work talking, and we'll see when I calm down. Anyway, get to making Litmus yourself. I'll be watching your videos, at least as long as that technology holds up. I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.